It's 12 o'clock, noon, on the dot when I arrive on Forsyth Avenue. On a sunny day like today, I'm expected to work 6 hours with an hour break at some point in the early part of the evening. So, really, I was to hang around this place for about 7 hours, which sucks big time because I could think about 20 other things I'd rather be doing with my time on a Friday afternoon. Mechanically, I approach the glass doors of the store, taking my daily glance at the large sign atop it. The Popstar Comics logo is represented by a chubby star with its name in red lettering circling the orbit like a planet's ring. Compared to the Asian diner next to us, well, we look pretty sad. The side's all decked out in gold and green with plenty of pictures showcasing various dishes they have, such as fried rice, spring rolls, and even sushi. They even have a few seats outside of the restaurant in case anyone wants to enjoy the smoggy atmosphere of the neighborhood. I mean, compared to us, they're like the main subject on an artist's painting, while our shop remains to be just dull colors in the background used to enforce whatever looks good in the foreground. We're a shop that many people don't notice, except for those who have a good eyesight and keen interest in anything remotely related to fun. In other words, we're noticed by kids. It usually happens at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Children by the masses arrive at the store, all curious and bewildered by the colorful covers of whatever on the hot sellers rack for the day. Allowance money goes straight into the register, while copies of Zelda, Mario, and Pokemon are exchanged over the counter, ready to be torn open by eager story devourers. Other times, the kids don't even buy anything and would much rather spend their time hanging out in the store looking at board games and figurines. Those kind of days never last that long though, since DDD typically shoos them away if they spent a good half hour in the store without buying anything. I've gotten a few good chuckles out of watching those spiels, let me tell you. And as everyone knows, school ends on a Friday, so I'm expecting a large number of kids to show up this afternoon. Kinda sucks given my situation, but at least after this, I'll be able to call it quits and still get paid for it. I might as well go out with a bang too. It'll be Kuro's last hurrah before saying goodbye to this nonsense and all these crazy comic book lovers. Thankfully, neither DDD nor Falcon works on Friday, which means it'll be just me and Fox, and since Fox typically tends to the back room, I should have most of the early afternoon to myself. It'll be a nice change of pace from the excitement from yesterday. I put my hands on the glass as I go through the door, but I barely hear the chime coming from the bell overhead. My mind immediately becomes overtaken by the sight of a dimly lit room, followed by Lucina standing on top of a stepladder who appears to be messing around with one of the lights on the ceiling. "Come on," she mutters, "come on, come on." The light bulb that she tugs on finally lets go of its fixture. "Gotcha! Ooh, whoa!" I act fast, but honestly, I'm not sure what was going through my head at the time. I just see her tumbling back like a domino, and with 10 feet between us, I did the only thing I could do and dove forward. On second thought, I should have just let her fall. I land hard on the carpet, hearing a sharp tear coming from the fabric of my t-shirt. I feel something like a baby rhinoceros land on my back, my ribcage nearly shattering if it wasn't for my arms cushioning the fall. Short breaths are caught in my lungs as my heart thumps to the ground in a panic. "Oh my gosh," I hear Lucina say. "Kuro, I'm so sorry." I feel her roll off me, which ends up crushing my right arm in the process. I hold back a tear as well as 100 curse words between my clenched teeth. "Are you okay?" I open my eyes, and she's on the floor next to me. With a sigh, I sit up, but I barely notice that she helps lift me. Wait a second, did she just touch me? "I'm fine," I snap, retracting my arm from her. "You should be more careful." Her eyes drop, much like Pitt's did in the previous night, and I realize that jerky motion in which I pulled my arm away was what startled her. "I'm sorry," she says again. "I thought I could change the light bulb on my own before you showed up." The bulb that was in her hand was now on the floor next to us, but the top of it had already been blacked out. Apparently, it was a dud. "It's weird," I reply. "Falcon replaced it yesterday before you came to work." "He left a note on the door," she says, fishing a small paper out of the back of her jean pocket. "The bulb was replaced yesterday was actually an old one. He said that he left the real one under the counter and had forgotten to change it." She glanced at the note again, although I don't really understand why they would keep a faulty light bulb in the first place. Well, I can think of 3 good reasons, actually. 1, DDD is cheap. 2, he's trying to save money. And 3, he was probably thought that there was still some juice left in it. Oh wait, all those reasons mean the same thing. "Do you have the good one?" I asked. At this point, I just wanted the dang light to be fixed. The room was surprisingly dark, despite the presence of large front windows. "I've got it right here," she says, producing the new light bulb in question. I swipe it from her, pulling myself to my feet and then to the stepladder. In a matter of seconds, I installed the bulb, folded up the ladder, and flicked the lights on. Lucina stares at me in bewilderment. "Next time, just wait until someone else is here," I say to her. "Oh," she replies, "okay." She gets to her feet, and for a moment, there's nothing but an awkward silence between us. She quickly mutters, "Fox is in the back. I didn't want to disturb him, though, because I thought he was busy." I suddenly remember that Fox was Lucina's ride to work into Popstar today. "You can still ask," I say. "I mean, if he's busy, the worst he'll say is that he's just busy." But then I thought to myself, how busy could he be for a guy who works at a freaking comic book store? He says that Fridays are usually one of our busier days, she explained, so he's checking to make sure that we have enough copies in the backlog for all the popular series. Mario, Pokemon, and Zelda. Swear I've heard these 3 names more than I've heard my brother call me by my own. Even Lucina is repping the Super Mario series with that shirt that has an Italian plumber himself stamped onto it. Does she keep a closet full of these novelty shirts at home? I'm reminded of my own clothes, but thankfully there's no visible tear anywhere from the fall that I took. At least, I don't think there is. We're working on the front then, I say, and rather unenthusiastically at that. As long as Lucina's here, I can't goof off lest I get scolded by one of my co-workers. So much for an easy Friday. Okay, her mellow attitude from before seems to have washed over with the diligent Lucina that I met yesterday. So, what should I do first? You can... I scanned the room looking for a task to assign Lucina, and since today is my first real day playing the leader, coming up with a job for her becomes pretty difficult. It's not like I ever paid attention to my other duties ever since most of the time I swear they were making me move boxes or sweep floors. It can't be that hard. Falcon comes up with tasks all the time. Eventually, my eyes fall on the windows across the room. First, I say, you can toss the burnt light bulb. Then, you can wash down the windows from front to back. An uncontrollable smirk inches across me. Cleaning up the supplies in the storage room, and you can use the water from the bathroom to rinse. I'll pause to remember if there's anything that DDD would say at a time like this. And make sure you don't waste any water, only fill up half as much as you need. Lucina nods her head several times as I explain the details, but she doesn't actually go anywhere until I tell her that she can start. Soon enough, she disappears into the back and I can hear running water from the room. Naturally, I take my seat at the captain's helm, leaning back in my chair and looking at random papers and other notes under the counter. That ought to keep her busy for a while, I thought. Not gonna lie, felt pretty good giving direct orders like that. Whoops, I forgot to write on the hand-in sheet. Nah, they won't notice. It's by some bizarre coincidence that none of the customers who stop in the store this afternoon ask me for anything. It's not like I try to avoid confrontations. Okay, well, maybe I do, but I mean, if they need help, it's their job to ask for it, not me. That's how it's supposed to work, right? Lucina remains preoccupied with the windows, greeting people as they pass by with a welcoming smile. Of course, I notice that smile quickly disintegrate once she gets back to scrubbing down the glass with her mop. Watching her work reminds me of how Falcon would sit back and watch me do the hard labor, now that the tables have turned. Although, honestly, I wish it was him doing it instead of Lucina. The task that I gave her kinda seems like an unfair punishment that should have been directed at someone else. Oh well, at least the windows will look nice after this. Afternoon, Kuro. Huh? Whoa! I tumble back from my seat as Fox McCloud enters the room. His eyes fall on my own and I hit the floor, a mistake that I made for getting a little bit too comfortable on the stool. Being the supervisor that I am, I thought it would be appropriate for me to put my feet up on the counter, but I didn't expect him to emerge from the depths of the back room so soon. Working hard, I see, says Fox slyly pulling a small trolley with comic books behind him. I climb back up on the counter as he maneuvers the trolley down the main aisle. Harder than you, I retort. At least we're getting something done out here. You mean she's getting something done out here, he replies, nodding his head towards Lucina. Thankfully, she was now working on the outside part of the window and couldn't hear our conversation. What can I say? I'm a delegate. I heard Falcon use that word more than a few times, but he always pronounced it weird. The way he says it, it sounds like he's selling delegator, as in an alligator that works at a deli. And I still can't help but think of that every time I say it, though. Okay there, Falcon. Fox pulls the trolley around to the hot sellers rack and begins unloading the stack of books. If you aren't too busy, I could use some help. I'm suddenly feeling sour all over again, but without an excuse, I shuffle over to his position and start taking things off the rack. I noticed that the comics that he had brought were more of those Pokemon ones. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, he explains. Hot off the presses, too. He holds a copy up to his snuff and takes a whiff. Fans have been dying for these babies for years, and finally Nintendo delivered. I barely hear his last comment because I'm just so weirded out at the fact that he practically inhaled the new paperback aroma. I refrain from saying anything about it, deciding that at the end of the day, this conversation was just not worth having. Pokemon, I mutter instead. I don't understand how this series is so popular. Oh, this is nothing, says Fox with a smirk. You should have seen the franchise back in '97. There was so much Pokemon merchandise that they practically flooded the shelves of every toy store in the city. He pulls the comic off and replaces it with another one. Some kids outgrew the series, but true fans remain to this day. If you're curious, you should read a few of these yourself. Personally, I recommend the Gold and Silver series. Even though the re-reprints came out a few years ago, nothing could beat the original releases. Thanks, but I think I'll pass, I reply nonchalantly. Comics just are my thing. Yes, it was an understatement, but like I said, I wasn't about to get into another discussion about why I am the way I am. Is that so? He says to me with a rather surprised look on his face. You're not a fan? Not really. Yet another understatement. I just don't have time for them. Not to mention, I can't afford it. The last excuse came out of the fly. Well, you're free to read anything from the backlogs during your break if you're interested. It's mostly junk, but there's some hidden gems back there like Duck Hunt and Bobble Bobble. He says it to me as though I've heard of these comics before, but I can't even imagine what the story with a title like Bobble Bobble would even be about. Thanks, but I think I'll pass, I reply flatly. His shoulders shrugging was a sure enough sign that he had finally gotten the message. Despite my attempts at cutting our conversation short, it seems like it wouldn't have mattered anyway due to the arrival of some new customers. We finished signing up the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire copies just as the city bus pulls up in front of the store, dumping a hefty amount of kids, teens, and parents at Popstar Comics' front door. It's 3 already, muttered Fox, glancing at his watch. Alright, better call on Lucina now. He pulls the trolley back to the back room, but I noticed that Lucina had already began packing up her cleaning supplies. Not only that, but the windows were practically sparkling. I could actually read the name of the coffee shop across the street now. The front door opens as a crowd pours in, and already I'm behind the counter in my safe zone. The store suddenly booms to life as people reach for new issues of Pokemon. The kids were already tearing through the pages and talking to their friends about the colorful pictures and text held within. To my surprise, Fox was in the crowd too, helping customers locate the comics that they needed or simply discussing whether or not Nintendo will include the Delta episode, whatever that is, in the new comics. Excuse me, pardon me, comes Lucina's voice as she zigzags through the store in order to reach me. She's holding her mop as well as a bucket of dirty water. Watch yourself, I say, but I don't bother opening the rear door for her. My eyes are set on a group of kids peering through the glass cabinet where the figurines are stored. I didn't know that it got this busy here, she replies, pushing her way through the door with her back. I guess she didn't hear my comment, but it doesn't matter anyway as she's soon back out here to help manage the floor. What do you think? What do I think of what? I reply, turning my attention back to her. I notice that her hair is a little damp, and I think about how nice it would be to dunk my own head in some water to escape the mugginess of this place. Of the window, she says, and there's something like a little laugh trailing behind the end of that sentence. Oh, I take a quick glance, despite the fact that I had already seen them. They're nice. Good work. Thanks. So, I guess we're just helping out in here? Pretty much. This is every Friday. Customers flock in in the after-school rush, and we already need at least 2 people out front in order to deal with the traffic. Granted, since it's usually Fox and I before, I was typically the one who remained behind the counter since Fox was naturally better at conversating with the customers. That wasn't about to change anytime soon. Just go around and see if anyone needs help finding stuff. I'll be back here and man the register. Okay. She nods her head before zigzagging her way back through the bodies. I turn my attention back to the figurine shelf, and those kids are still hanging around it like mosquitoes at a horse ranch. Remember DDD would always get mad whenever he saw people loitering near the toys with no intention of buying anything. He's the kind of person that would charge people for breathing the air in his establishment if it wasn't already illegal to do that. No, wait, is it illegal? I don't know, but I'm not about to give him any ideas. Excuse me? Says a boy at the counter. My attention is once again torn away from the cabinet as I met 2 boys. Both boys appear to be together. They seem to be around the same age, similar to the villager from the other day, but not nearly as disheveled as him. One boy is wearing a red baseball cap and a striped t-shirt, and I notice him place a comic book on the countertop. Yeah, I reply, but naturally I already knew why they're here. We'd like to buy these, the boy says. He looks surprised when he sees that there's only 1 book on the counter. He turns to his friend muttering, Hey, put yours up there too. The other boy with pale, wavy blonde hair jumps at the attention when I look at him. Right away I can tell he's one of those timid types. Reminds me of the kids that I used to bully in school. Years later, and they still haven't changed. Although he does seem to be sporting a striped shirt similar to the baseball-capped kid. Right, he says quietly. And with a shaky hand, his copy of Omega Ruby is placed on the counter. I reach out to grab the book, and he retracts his hand immediately as if though I was going to hit him or something. What's your problem? I ask, brushing the comic book over the scanner. The blonde boy shudders and appears to shrink into the ground, and he refuses to look at me. Oh, don't mind him, says the baseball cap kid. He's always like this when he talks to strangers. No, I don't, replies the blonde boy, but he had no rebuttal to follow up that statement. I ignore their comments, checking the total price on the screen, and as expected, customers who purchased both Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire issues together received a 10% discount on the whole purchase. It was one of our many in-store promotions. 48 altogether, I say, and the 2 boys were already fishing in their pockets for this week's allowance money. Here, the baseball cap hands me some coins, a small collection that he and his friend had amassed. You're 10 cents short. The blonde boy frantically searches his pockets for more change, but all that comes up is a twisted paperclip and a broken pencil. Sorry, Ness, he says to the baseball cap kid. I'm all out. Hang on. The kid, who apparently went by the name of Ness, pulls out one of his shoes and shakes some coins out of it. Ha, here you go. I'm somewhat disgusted and surprised as I receive their payment. And 2 seconds later, I've dropped the comics into a plastic bag and handed it over the counter. Later, I mutter, hoping this will be the last time I talk to these two clowns for the rest of the day. Thanks, says Ness, but instead of scurrying off to read their new comics, the two kids remain in front of the counter. Say, are you new here? I quickly debate whether or not discussing my personal schedule with these strangers is worth getting into or not. It must have been regulars, but in all honesty, this is the first time I've ever seen them. Sort of, I reply, looking down at them. Why, what's it to you? My scary face luckily frightened the blonde boy again, and I have to admit, I'm enjoying the sight. The boy named Ness pulls himself forward again, though, as he appears to stand firm and unafraid. It's nothing to me, says Ness, but my friend here says that he knows you. Ness, the other boy whines. What are you? Come on, man. You want to find out if he's real or not? They're whispering to each other about something, and now I'm kind of curious. With Fox and Lucina dealing with other customers, these two kids were the only thing I had to worry about at the counter, and I find myself leaning forward a little in order to get a better ear of their conversation, but jump back when they both glance at me. I hope you don't mind, says Ness all of a sudden, but Lucas has a question for you. So, the name of the blonde boy turns out to be Lucas, and as he's standing there, staring at me with sharpened eyes, I notice that his legs are quivering, but I commend him for putting on big boy pants so quickly. Alright then, go ahead, I reply. I don't have all day. Sir, I was just wondering, says Lucas, his fist clenched into tight knots. Is your name Kuro? My, what gave you the first hint, genius? Yeah, I said, but I'm not looking too impressed. I flashed my name tag on the front of my shirt, a 4-letter word that I myself had scribbled on with Sharpie. No, Lucas replies, much quieter now. Are you the Kuro? Am I the Kuro? They couldn't possibly mean the Kuro who walks out at midnight, the very same Kuro who beats up punks in alleyways and steals money from snobby business owners. I haven't seen that Kuro around for a while now. I don't know what you're talking about, I say flatly. If these kids recognize me, there's no way in hell that I'm ever gonna take a chance at this store. At least not with Fox and Lucina within earshot. Come on, Kuro, you can't fool us, says Ness, hopping on his tiptoes briefly. You know those wings from anywhere. I feel my wings folding out of sight on their own, but I make no reaction whatsoever. I can't figure out how these two bozos know me, and I sure as hell don't recognize them from anywhere. Did Wario put them up to this? Can I help whoever is next over here? I say loudly, but to my dismay, no one else was lined up behind them. Come on, Ness, murmurs Lucas as he grabs his friend by the arm. Let's get out of here. No way, Ness raises his chin. I want to know if it's true or not. If what's true or not, I automatically ask. If Kuro has really retired. As anticipated, several rumors have already begun spreading about me and my current situation with the Gerudos. I suppose that's partially my fault, having overstayed my welcome here at Popstar Comics. After I disappeared, people thought I had given up on the gang and that I was seriously turning over a new leaf in an attempt to start my life all over again. Little did anyone else realize, however, that I never planned on staying. I bet my own feathers that Ashley had started these rumors too. She'd practically do anything to have me back. Nevertheless, though, the fact that Ness and Lucas know more about me than I know about them pisses me off, and in 2 seconds I'm leaning over the counter, towering over them with yet another menacing glare. Listen here, you little punks, I growl. Kuro hasn't retired yet, and he has no plans of doing so anytime soon. I'm only working here to prove a point to someone who got on my bad side, so unless you want me to do the same thing to you, I suggest you haul out of here before I drop-kick you to the curb. A final slam on the counter seals the deal for both of them as they shake their heads in terror. But unfortunately, they remain rooted in place. It seems as though my threat had petrified them. I should have gone on with a surge, but a surge of commotion brought our discussion to a halt when I heard someone shouting from the front of the store. There were screams and a break in the crowd, and when I saw Fox trip and knock over one of the standing comic stands, the figure of a cloaked individual escaped my eye through the shimmering windows.
Oh my god! Someone stop him!
A customer shouted. Kuro! Fox is on the ground as a customer tried to lift the metal display off of him. Call the police! I could hear him loud and clear, but I wasn't about to call any police department. I barely caught wind of the crime as it took place, and for some reason, I knew that pressing that button under the counter would be a waste of time. I didn't even stop to think about it. In one swift motion, I leaped over the countertop, landing just in time as Ness and Lucas fell out of the way. My feet seemed to move on their own as I weaved through the crowd as smooth as a bobsled on ice. Kuro? Called Lucina. What are you? I didn't hear her though. For the next thing I knew, I was out the door and on the sizzling pavement of Forsyth, and just as I expected, there was the cloaked character sprinting down the street, shoving past any and all pedestrians that stood in his way. I gave chase. "Stop!" I shouted, running through the opening of people. For a Friday, it was surprisingly busy outside, with what the construction crews and maintenance workers and everything. I hurtled over fallen pylons and mailboxes, and even some unfortunate bystanders who just so happened to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time when the shadow swept through. I could see the back of his pants, but whatever he was wearing fluttered up and covered his head. One thing that was for certain, he was short. The thief ducks under a large mirror that two schmucks were loading onto a moving truck. I hesitate for a moment before deciding that 7 years of bad luck couldn't possibly be any worse than what I have already gone through in all my life. Guys carrying the glass fixtures flinch as I slam their eyes shut, and with the agility of a fox, I slide gracefully beneath the mirror, and then back on my feet, giving chase to the comic thief for another 2 or 3 blocks. Eventually, the kid breaks off into an alleyway, and for a second, I hope that it's a dead end. I follow suit, and I notice that he dropped a couple of the comic books that he was carrying. Up ahead, there's a chain link fence, and I see the kid attempting to climb over it. "Not so fast!" I say, lunging forward and grasping the thief by his ankle. Some more comics drop, and just as I'm about to grab him with my other hand, he kicks me off, sending me tumbling to the dirt. I catch a glance of his face as he climbs over, and I'm shocked that I recognize him. He lands in the dumpster before jumping to the ground and running through the next alley. The thought of going after him again didn't even occur to me. "The villager," I muttered between hard breaths. Yes, the face of that thief did belong to the boy that I spoke to a few days ago in Smash Station. I didn't understand why, though. I did recall him mentioning to me that he was trying to maintain a low profile. However, it seems that the cause of the mass break-ins recently originated from him and his clan. It's a shame, too, since up to this point, I thought that he and I were pretty good friends. When I see him again, I'm gonna... Kuro, are you alright? I turn around to see Lucina trotting to me, but before I can say anything, she's already helping me to my feet. The alarm in my brain goes off again as she puts her hands on me. "Yeah, I'm fine," I say as I pull away from her like before, only this time I end up falling to the ground again like someone that just kicked me in the shin. "Ow! You're hurt," she says. "Come on, let's get back to the store." She lifts me up again, and as much as I want to resist, I can't. Something in my right leg is killing me, probably just after the kid knocked me off the fence. "I think I sprained my ankle," I muttered. "It's okay, I'm just glad you're safe." She walks me out of the alley and back onto the street. I try not to lean on her too much. "Did you see who it was?" I did, but was it worth telling her about? I mean, sure, she was just as involved as I was, being a Popstar employee. However, seeing the face of the villager sparked a different kind of emotion in me. I wasn't just upset that we had been robbed, I was infuriated, and the fact that I had talked to him recently made this assault more personal than I would have thought. "No," I say to her. "He disappeared before I got there." We passed by one of the fallen comic books. An issue of Alpha Sapphire turned to a random page. The illustration depicted 2 colorful monsters fighting each other just as the villager and I had done moments before. I scooped it up and I find myself studying the front cover with a large whale-like creature with ginormous fins. It was a little torn, but you could tell by looking at it that this issue was hot off the presses.